Think about how most goods and services are provided. So when you want to get anything from a car to a haircut to someone to landscape your lawn to a cleaning service to a personal gym, you go out into the market, you look at what you can afford, what you want, you look at the options, and you buy the option that suits you best based on what you can afford. Now, think about the way education is provided. Education is generally provided by the government. It's provided by the state. We have a public education system that's tax supported. So tax dollars go into that education system. And if you want to, you can go to a private school, but your tax money still goes towards that public school. So it's not like you're shopping around for options. You go to the school that you're zoned for, or the public school rather that you're zoned for, or if you really can afford it, whatever, you go to a private school. So why is this different? Most services and goods we look for in a market, but education is provided by the state. Well, there are a few reasons that we've kind of looked at. One of them is the idea that schools have some sort of democratic equality purpose, that we're all best served when we have some sort of equal education. And if you get to choose a Catholic school and you get to choose a secular Montessori school and you get to choose a military academy, we're not all going to be on the same page. Another argument is that since the education of everyone affects everyone else, it's only fair that we all pay for everyone's education rather than everyone paying individually. So the idea there is that if I were to pay for my own education, I would only pay up to a certain point. And the fact is that my education benefits you as well. So it doesn't just benefit me. So the idea is that we can all pay for each other's education because we all benefit from having an educated citizenry. Well, in this video, we're going to look a little bit at school choice, which is the idea that we need to bring education back into a market type of system. So the idea here that people have is that instead of being zoned for a public school, it would be best if you bought education in the same way that you would buy a car or a personal gym or something like that. You go out into the market, look at your options, and find the best option that suits you relative to what you can afford. So there's certain types of school choice, and we're going to go over those in this brief video. There are primarily 5 kinds of school choice, and we're going to look at each of them. There's public school choice, there's a charter school choice, there's a voucher system, there are education tax credits, or scholarship tax credits, and there's a relatively new one called education savings accounts. So here's how all of these work, but in order to understand that, we need to look at how the system of conventional public school works. With conventional public schools, you give your money to the government, both local, state, and federal taxes. That tax money is given to the public schools in all different areas. And then the public school you go to is determined by where you live. You are what's called zoned for a particular school. That's the school you go to. Now, there's some element of choice in this model. You can choose which district to live in, of course, and that dictates your school. Or you can go to a private school if you can afford to pay tuition on top of your tax dollars. But what generally happens is you pay tax dollars to the government redistributes that to the schools, and then you go to whatever school that you're zoned for. So the first type of school choice model is called public school choice or open enrollment. And this is kind of similar to the regular conventional school system model with an element of choice between public schools mixed in. So you give your money to the government in tax dollars, they give their money to the school system. But instead of going to the school that you're zoned for, open enrollment allows you to choose which public school you want to go to. So if there's a school in kind of a neighboring area that you'd like to send your children to, you can send them there. Or if you want to stay with the school in your area, you can send them there. Open enrollment, some areas give open enrollment choice to every single parent and student within the district. Others limit it to parents and students who are going to what the state deems low-performing schools. If a school performs low for a consistent amount of time, the parents and students who go to that school can then choose to go to a different school the next year. The next one is called charter schools, and this one's a little bit difficult to understand. Charter schools are public schools in that they function within the public school system, but they're privately run schools. And in addition to becoming part of the public system, these schools actually are exempt from certain rules and regulations, so they can be a little bit innovative. So let me explain how this works. So you pay your money to the government with taxes, and the taxes get distributed to all the public schools in the area. But there are certain private companies or private nonprofits that want to operate schools that they think are innovative, that are a little bit different than other schools. Well, the public school system can decide to give them what's called a charter to operate within the public school system. And in return, they have to do certain things. They have to comply with certain state regulations and things, but they can be a little bit innovative. And here's where the element of choice comes in. Students can choose into these charter schools. If the charter school has more seats than there are interested applicants, The charter school must take all the people who want to apply to the charter school. They can't discriminate by having admission standards. But if there are more people who want to go to the charter school than the charter school has seats, they, again, can't have admission standards, so they have to operate by a lottery system. So everyone enters into a lottery, and then the names that are called at random are the people who are admitted to that school. So people can somewhat choose into a charter school system, but again, it's still part of the public school system as such. They're allowed to be a little bit more innovative, but they're still part of the public school system, and they receive their money not from the consumer, but from the public school system. So now there's a voucher system. Now we're moving away from the public school system. Here's how vouchers work. Vouchers work in some ways like a food court, where if you got government funds and you used it at a food court. So here's what happens. The government gives people tax money that's redistributed, but instead of the tax money going to the public school system, the tax money goes to individual consumers. And for each child you have, you would get a certain amount of voucher money. And that voucher money can now be used at any public or any private school. So the transaction is between you and the school system. The government gives you the money and you give it to the private school that you want to go to. Next is the scholarship tax credit system, and this one's slightly different from a voucher system in a fairly sophisticated way. So with a voucher system, you give your tax money to the government, and then they give the tax money back to people once it's evenly divided as a voucher. With the tax credit system, what happens is instead of getting money back from the government in the form of a voucher, you just get a tax deduction. So if you paid $6,000 in federal or state taxes, you might get an exemption for those taxes if you have a child who's of schooling age, and you just use that tax credit to pay for a private school. That's the way it works in states like Alabama. In Florida, there's an additional part to the tax credit idea. You can get a tax credit if you donate a certain amount of money to a scholarship agency. So particularly businesses, if they want to get certain tax credits, they can donate to an education scholarship agency, and that agency then in turn gives scholarships to low-income students. So on one hand, a parent can receive a tax credit to give to their own child, and on the other hand, a business can donate to a tax credit agency or a scholarship agency, receive a tax credit, and the scholarship will go to a low-income child who whose parents don't have a tax liability. And then that's used, again, for private schools. So it's similar to a voucher system. It's just the way the money gets back to the parents is a little bit different than a voucher system. And last but not least, we have an education savings account. And remember how we said that in a public school system, if you want to go to a private school, your tax money still goes to the public school system, and then you must pay the private tuition over top. Well, an education savings account does it this way. If you have children who are going to attend a public school and you elect for them not to attend the public school, the state will give, I think it's 90% or so, of the money that they would have spent in the public school system for your child back to you, so that you can then use that either for private school, or the interesting thing about education savings accounts is you could spend that money for any educational service. Some of it could go to a school, some of it could go to online classes, some of it could go to a certain care-related service that's related to school spending. But you can really structure your child's education in the way you'd like. It's not just going to a school. It can go towards any bundle of educational services. And those are the 5 methods of school choice. So hopefully that'll give you a better understanding, so that now we can talk about the pros and the cons and the politics and the law of school choice.